When wages rise, many people assume manufacturing costs should rise as well. Higher pay seems like it must lead to higher prices, thinner margins, or factories relocating. That assumption feels natural because wages are visible, easy to measure, and closely tied to people's lived experience. On the surface, the pattern appears straightforward. In many countries, workers earn significantly more per hour than they did 10 years ago. Yet, the cost of manufactured goods, electronics, appliances, industrial components, often remains stable or even declines in real terms. The usual explanation focuses on a single factor: automation. Machines replace workers, productivity rises, and higher wages stop being a problem. There is some truth in that story, but it treats cost as a single lever that can simply be pulled or replaced. In practice, manufacturing costs behave differently because cost is a system, not a line item. Wages are only one input inside a tightly coordinated structure that absorbs pressure, shifts it elsewhere, and spreads it out over time. To understand why total costs often stay flat while wages rise, we need to look at how that system actually operates. Manufacturing cost systems are built around long-term capital, not short-term labor prices. Most factories do not adjust prices every time wages change. They operate within equipment life cycles that last years, sometimes decades. A modern production line is designed to produce a fixed volume at a fixed tolerance for a long period. Once that line is in place, the largest costs are depreciation, maintenance, energy, logistics, and coordination, not hourly wages alone. As wages increase gradually, they are absorbed into a much larger cost structure that itself changes slowly. This is the first structural mechanism: capital amortization over time. When a factory invests in machinery, that cost is spread across millions of units. If wages rise by 5%, the effect on unit cost depends on how much labor is still embedded in each product. In many industries, decades of mechanization have already reduced labor's share. This does not require constant new automation. It depends on the fact that past automation continues to deliver output. A machine installed 10 years ago is still producing today, but its cost was fixed under earlier conditions. As time passes, that investment becomes cheaper per unit, even while wages move upward. The system adapts through accumulation, not immediate response. The second mechanism is organizational learning and process density. Factories do not operate in isolation. They function inside dense networks of suppliers, logistics firms, maintenance providers, and downstream customers. As wages rise slowly over time, firms adjust by changing how work is organized rather than simply paying more for the same process. Tasks are reordered, error rates decline, throughput increases, downtime is reduced. None of this looks like a breakthrough. These changes emerge gradually, through repetition and refinement. A factory that once needed 10 workers to manage quality checks may, over years, redesign its workflow so fewer checks are needed at the end because fewer mistakes occur at the beginning. Pay per worker may rise, but the number of labor hours required per unit quietly falls. This is not a one-off efficiency gain. It is cumulative learning. As output scales up, small improvements stack on top of each other. Each reduction in rework, scrap, or delay lowers effective labor cost without touching wages at all. Over time, the system becomes denser and more coordinated, allowing higher wages and stable total costs to coexist. The third mechanism is input substitution within constraints. When labor becomes more expensive relative to other inputs, manufacturers change what they use, not just what they pay. They rebalance materials, energy use, product design, and sourcing choices across the system. This does not mean people are replaced overnight. It means effort is redirected. A product may be redesigned to require fewer assembly steps. A nearby supplier may reduce handling and transport costs even if its components are slightly more expensive. Packaging may be simplified to speed movement through logistics. Each adjustment is small. No single change explains stable costs. Together, they reshape how pressure is distributed inside the cost system. These substitutions are also limited. Manufacturers cannot endlessly trade labor for cheaper inputs. They face quality requirements, regulations, and physical constraints. As a result, adjustment happens slowly, over years, rather than through abrupt shifts. Timing is the critical factor. Wages usually rise gradually, driven by inflation, labor shortages, or policy changes. Manufacturing systems are designed to handle gradual change. They are vulnerable to shocks, but resilient to trends. Because cost systems respond over time, wage increases rarely show up immediately or directly. Instead, higher wages act as one signal among many, gradually pushing the system toward higher productivity, tighter coordination, and different input combinations. This is why a factory can operate profitably at much higher wages than it did a decade earlier without sharply raising prices. The visible variable changes while the underlying structure adjusts. This also explains why cross-country comparisons are often misleading. When low-wage regions are described as inherently cheaper places to manufacture, the focus is on the wrong level. What matters is not the wage itself, but how thoroughly the production system has adapted to operating at that wage. A high-wage factory with dense supplier networks, reliable infrastructure, and long amortized capital can outperform a low-wage factory that lacks coordination. Over time, the system outweighs the variable. This is not because wages are irrelevant. It is because their impact is filtered through everything surrounding them. Over decades, this produces a result that feels counterintuitive. Manufacturing costs can remain stable even as wages rise because the system continuously reallocates effort, capital, and coordination to sustain output. The cost does not vanish. It is spread across time. Investments made years earlier quietly support today's labor costs. Process improvements accumulate until fewer hours are needed per unit. Supply chains become denser, reducing frictions that once required significant labor to manage. From the outside, it can look as if wages no longer matter. From inside the system, wages are shaping decisions constantly, just slowly. This way of looking at cost changes how similar pressures should be interpreted elsewhere. When one input becomes more expensive, the outcome depends less on that input alone and more on the structure around it. Systems built on long-time horizons can absorb change. Systems optimized only for short-term flexibility struggle to do so. Manufacturing is not affordable because wages are low. It remains affordable because cost is managed as a system, adjusted gradually through accumulation rather than reaction. The same pattern appears wherever complex production systems operate over long periods of time.